Ladies and gentlemen, the Bosnian Phenom, now representing Montenegro, the legendary chess grandmaster, as described by himself in Facebook profile, Denis Kadric, continues to shine on currently ongoing European Championship in Serbia. Today in round 5, March 7th, 2023, he played a young international master from Azerbaijan, Samadov. Before we jump into the game, I wanted to clarify what I mean by continues to shine. In the third round, Denis had a very impressive win over a strong French grandmaster, Jules Moussard. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I highly encourage you to go check that game out if you already haven't done so. Now let's jump into this one. White starts with e4, c6, d4, d5, e5. We have advanced Caro-Kann on the board. Black plays bishop f5 before playing e6 to get the bishop out of the pawn chain, and white chooses the h4 line. What h4 accomplishes here is trying to put this bishop on f5 in a discomfort. For example, if e6, that bishop after g4 would be trapped. So black plays h5 to secure the bishop, bishop d3. Since that bishop is not in trouble anymore of getting trapped, white decides to get rid of light squared bishops. Bishop d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, queen goes to a5 check. Now, this is the first move where black deviates from the main line of the theory. e6 is the main line, and game continues something like knight f3, and apparently queen a5 is still the most popular move here. Knight d2, knight goes to h6, something like knight f5, and after knight b3, this queen either goes to a6 or b5, which should lead to dynamically balanced game. Now, after queen a5 check, black's idea, I believe, is to force knight d2. However, Denis had different idea in mind, goes with the Tal variation of advanced Caro-Kann. b4, white sacrifices a pawn on b5 with the idea of activating rook from b5. Queen takes b4, knight d2. Now this rook comes to open b file, where it will be attacking the pawn on b7, other than queen obviously on b4. Queen is forced to e7, the only square to protect the pawn, where it will be blocking the development of black's king side. White continues with the power play here, c4 challenging the center. Knight goes to h6 to develop the first piece into the game for black. Knight e2, knight f5, knight f3. More or less ideal placement for white knights. Now those knights will have a lot of mobility, either to jump to f4 or to g3 or to g5, depending on what black does. Black chooses to play queen c7 in the game, and computer really disliked this move, says that white is in driver's seat after queen c7 due to a lot of initiative. D takes c4 apparently was the only move here to keep somewhat of a balance. Apparently b5 is the move challenging the white's dominance. In the center, this queen will have to retreat somewhere else, and probably knight is a6, bringing now the knight into the game. If black has not analyzed this deep in detail, I do not blame Reed not finding b5, because it definitely does not look beautiful weakening the pawn structure this way. So queen c7 was played in the game, short castle, bishop goes to e7, bishop g5. Now in Caro-Kann positions, I think trading dark squared bishops in general favors white, excuse me. So bishop goes to g5, d takes c4, queen takes c4, bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, and knight to d7. This is the first checkpoint for white where the development phase has been finished and it is time to take concrete decisions. White tries knight g3, an interesting move here, attacking the f5 knight, pretty much getting rid of the only active piece into the black's position. If knight g3, obviously that would open up the f file. Now f7 pawn is going to be very difficult to defend. I believe after short castle there is queen d3 move threatening queen h7 checkmate, and after g6 that would lead to a nice little tactic. Rook takes f7, rook takes f7, queen g6, rook g7. We take on e6 with the check. King can't go to f8 because of checkmate from f1. And if king h8, queen h6, king g8, and knight e6 here will win some heavy material, either a queen or there is a checkmate threat. So probably a queen, which should win the game. So after knight g3, black did not take on g3, goes knight b6, and this is where first critical moment comes in the game. You can pause the video and see what move would you choose to play with white color here. Our queen is obviously under attack. If you actually did pause the video, good job. The move that was played in the game is knight e6. I think for the human mind it's hard to say no to this move. Knight takes e6. Basically, if you take back, then queen takes, and after knight e7 there will be knight f5. This knight d6, knight g7 are now threats. Computer says that it's still not all roses for white here. Black can still hold. However, I totally understand from human perspective this is not an easy line. So after knight takes e6, queen is still under attack, but white is also attacking the queen on c7. So black decides to play queen d7, keeping the threat on this queen, and also now e6 knight, either the pawn or the queen. White is pretty much forced here to eliminate that knight on b6. Rook takes b6, a takes b6, knight takes f5, f takes e6. So white has sacrificed an exchange for the initiative here. Knight will go to d6 with the check, make king to lose castling rights here. King goes d8, pawn goes to a4, so black doesn't have b5 move. Now this b6 pawn will become a target after king c7. Rook comes to the open b5, rook a6 to secure that weakness, rook to b3, rook f8. I think this was the first moment in the game where Denis took the sweet time. I think he spent around over 40 minutes on this move, 43 if I'm being precise. Definitely a complex situation here. How does white continue with the attack or active operations in general? So queen b4 was played in the game. That creates a couple of threats here. I think a5 is one threat. Another threat would be this knight discovery somewhere else, either c4 or b5, or probably also taking on b7. Surprisingly, after only 2 minutes of thought, black goes rook f4, which happens to be a mistake. When opponent spends 43 minutes, I think it would make sense to reevaluate situation a little bit here. Maybe black had spent time thinking on this move already and they were prepared for rook f4 here. Computer says that that is the first serious inaccuracy here where it starts to go wrong for black. Something like king moving back to b8 would still keep the balance. Knight takes b7, king takes queen f8, there's rook a4. I think d4 pawn now is under attack. So still somewhat of a balanced game here. Rook f3 is the move, rook g3 is the move, queen d4, rook g7. This will lead to a very complex endgame. Anyways, rook f4 was played in the game, which makes white's task here easier. After a5, now b pawn is in trouble. If b5, I believe there is this move g3, and now rook will have no good square to land. I mean, if it goes to g4, then this rook is completely out of the game, and I think also now the f file becomes critical. if rook goes back to f8, I believe there will be some kind of knight discovery, probably, yeah, taking on b5 and then taking the rook on f8. So after a5, the only move for black pretty much is to play c5 here. A takes b6, king goes back to b8, and queen takes c5. The critical position in the game, the only move apparently here for black to save the game was queen c6, or I would say keep up the better resistance, because white is probably still better here. Something like f3 is computer suggestion, takes their d takes c5. Currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 4 pawns. So after taking that pawn, we have exchange and the pawn for white for the rook. So white seems to still have a grip here, but it will be far from clear. It will still require a lot of technique from the white side. Rook a1 was played in the game. I think down on little time, this rook a1 move is hard to resist. I can definitely see why black got excited about this here, queen d8. But apparently this rook on b3 covers everything just perfectly. So d5, threatening to simply push this pawn all the way to e7, where basically queen won't be able to take it because of the checkmate on c8. And if rook takes h4, rook h3 just covers everything. Rook takes h3, pawn takes h3, and now black will have difficulties stopping white's threats here. If takes on d5, queen takes d5, queen takes b6, there is queen g8 move. If king a8, knight c8 wins the queen, king c7 lands into a checkmate from c8. So after d5, black decides to take on d5 back, g3 attacking the rook, and also kind of covering the h4 pawn. Not really though, rook h4 is still a possibility here. White does not want to allow these checks. Actually, this leads to a perpetual here, so still not too late to blunder. I think after king g2 there will be queen h1, and now king will be forced to go up, which is not fun at all considering two heavy pieces here. If rook h3, I believe there will be rook h1 check, and then queen g4, queen d1, queen g4 checkmate will force the perpetual. So white doesn't want any of that. King g2, rook h2, h1, and knight f7. Now attacking the queen will make it very uncomfortable to keep protecting all the important squares. c7 is one of them, f8 is probably another one. Rook h g1 check, king hides on f3, there are no more checks available, and that would put black in a very difficult spot here. Rook g2 c1 was playing to attack the queen. I think white can simply win a piece by queen takes c1 and then taking the queen on d8. However, Denis decides to win this in style. Queen d6 check, forcing queen takes d6, e takes d6, now threatening to promote with the checkmate, d7 and d8. King c8 to stop the d7, and now rook comes from the third rank to e file, and next rook e8 check or rook e7 will be pretty much unstoppable. Rook c4 was played, and after rook e7, black resigns because d7, d8 comes with the checkmate. Alright, let's all wish Denis best of luck for the remainder of the tournament to cross 2600 and also qualify for the World Cup, which would be the case if he gets in top 23 place. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the game as much as I did. I will see you on the next one. Cheers.